March 5, 2004. At 10,500 feet over the Gulf of Mexico, the crew of a military aircraft is tracking drug smugglers. Their instruments detect something. One object. Then two. In seconds, 11. We are not alone. The pilot tries to approach. The object flees at impossible speed. It returns. It pursues them. The crew is terrified. The radar doesn't lie. The infrared system picks up everything. But when they look out the window, there is nothing visible. 3 weeks later, something unprecedented happens. Mexico's Secretary of Defense makes all the information public. Video. Radar data. Uncensored testimonies. Why would a government voluntarily hand over evidence of something it cannot explain? This is the story of the most documented UFO incident in Latin American history. A case involving state-of-the-art military equipment, trained pilots, and a government decision that would forever change how we talk about unidentified aerial phenomena in Mexico. Unlike anonymous reports or blurry amateur videos, this case has something almost no other can claim: full official backing. Real names. Military ranks. Technical documentation. All made public by Mexican authorities. Show, photo of General Clemente Vega Garcia. But as you'll discover, the deeper you look, the more complicated it becomes. Because this case isn't just about what those pilots saw that afternoon. It's about how far a government is willing to go when its own military faces something inexplicable. To understand what really happened in the airspace over Campeche, we need to go back to Mexico in 2004. To a strategic oil-producing region. To a war on drugs that was just beginning to show its true face. And a routine mission that was about to become anything but routine. March 2004. Mexico is under the government of Vicente Fox, the first opposition president in 70 years. The country faces a growing challenge: drug trafficking. In the southeast, the state of Campeche is crucial for two reasons. First, its Gulf of Mexico coastline is a drug trafficking route. Second, it is home to Cantarell, one of the country's largest oil complexes, located 80 kilometers offshore. The Mexican Air Force conducts constant operations in the area, searching for drug trafficking aircraft flying low to evade radar. These are surveillance missions, not combat missions. Detect, identify, report. The Merlin C-26A. It's not a fighter jet, it's a surveillance platform equipped with cutting-edge technology. Two systems are crucial to our story. The N/PS-143 Bravo Victor III, a radar capable of detecting moving targets even at low altitude. And the Flurstar Sapphire II, an infrared thermal imaging system that can capture heat sources completely invisible to the human eye. This equipment not only detects hot objects, it records them. The crew for the March 5th flight is made up of experienced professionals. Major Magdaleno Jasso Nunez, pilot commander of Air Squadron 501. Years of experience flying over these waters. Lieutenant German Marine Ramirez, radar operator. His job, to identify each signal, each contact, and determine if it is a threat or a false alarm. Lieutenant Mario Adrian Vasquez Tellez, FLIR system operator. His eyes are the infrared camera. If something emits heat, he sees it first. 3 men. An airplane full of military technology. A routine surveillance mission. At 5 p.m., they take off from the base. The weather is typical for the region: hot, humid, and partly cloudy. The land-sea interface creates challenging atmospheric conditions. Not ideal for precise imaging, but nothing these systems can't handle. What's about to happen, no one could handle it. At approximately 5 p.m., the Merlin C-26A is flying at 10,500 feet over Ciudad del Carmen, Campeche. Lieutenant Marine's eyes are fixed on the radar screen. Something appears. Unknown traffic. One contact. Unidentified. An counter-narcotics operation, this is exactly what they're looking for. Major Jasso makes an immediate decision: to approach for visual identification. They need to confirm if this is the target they're looking for. The plane is maneuvering. It's approaching. The object disappears. Not gradually. Not by descending. It simply vanishes. At a speed that shouldn't be possible. Major Jasso radios the base. Possible suspect detected. Requests interceptor aircraft be on alert. But then something even stranger happens. The object returns. And he's not just coming back. Now he's following them. Imagine the scene. You're in a cabin, surrounded by the most advanced technology your country has to offer. Your radar tells you something is behind you. Your infrared system confirms an intense heat source. Real. Right there. You look out the window. Nothing. Empty sky. Lieutenant Vasquez adjusts the FLIR. The infrared camera doesn't lie. There's something there. Something very hot. Moving in a way no conventional aircraft can. The crew attempts to make visual contact. They change angles, adjust position. The radar and FLIR clearly show it's not one contact. It's two. Two objects. Following them. Invisible to the human eye. Major Jasso contacts the base again. His voice no longer sounds routine. Something unusual is happening. They need to understand what this is. The base is listening. It's waiting for information. And then everything changes. In a matter of seconds, the radar explodes into activity. There aren't two objects. There are 11. 11 heat sources. 11 signals. Appearing as if materializing out of thin air. No gradual approach. No visible trajectory. Simply, there. We are not alone. The voice of one of the crew members. A nervous laugh. The kind of laugh that comes out when your brain can't process what you're experiencing. Lieutenant Marine would later describe this moment. Was I afraid? Yes. A little afraid because we were facing something that had never happened before. This is where the data gets strange. The FLIR system clearly detects 11 objects. 11 heat sources moving irregularly. Some brighter than others. All emitting an intense thermal signature. The radar only shows 3. How can infrared detect 11 objects while radar only confirms 3? They are different systems, yes, but they are looking at the same airspace at the same time. Lieutenant Vasquez was recording everything. The FLIR system was recording every frame. He would later insist there was no way to alter the recorded images. Objects move erratically. There is no recognizable flight pattern. No military formation. Speed seemed to change instantaneously. Maneuvers that would violate the laws of aeronautical physics as we know them. Major Jasso makes another decision. They try to follow them. The pilot would later state, the military jets were chasing the lights and I think they could sense we were chasing them. Think about that sentence for a moment. They could feel we were following them. An experienced military pilot, using sophisticated surveillance equipment, described unknown objects as if they were sentient. As if they were reacting to being followed. And then, as suddenly as they appeared, the jets stopped following them. Objects disappear. The Merlin C-26A returns to base. The crew is visibly shaken. They have experienced something for which there is no protocol. There is no operations manual that covers being pursued by 11 invisible objects detectable only in infrared. Major Jasso prepares his report. Each crew member gives their testimony. The data is downloaded, video, radar, audio, everything. And then something almost as unusual as the incident itself begins. The investigation. In most countries, this is where the story ends. A classified report. Filed away. Forgotten. Mexico decided on something different. General Clemente Vega Garcia, Mexico's Secretary of Defense and commander of all the country's armed forces, receives Major Jasso's report. And he doesn't dismiss it. Order a full investigation. For weeks, the Department of Defense evaluates every element, crew statements, frame-by-frame analysis of the FLIR video, radar readings, measurements of all equipment, and complete weather data from that day. They are looking for explanations. Equipment malfunction. Atmospheric phenomena. Mistaken identification. Human error. They can't find any. On April 20, 2004, 6 weeks after the incident, General Vega made an unprecedented decision. Contact Jamie Maussan. Maussan is a journalist, host of the program 60 Minutes on Mexican television, and winner of journalism awards. He is also the country's best-known UFO researcher. On April 21, Maussan met with General Vega and his staff at the Sedena facilities. They informed him of the incident and showed him the evidence. The next day, April 22, something historic happened. Mexico's Secretary of Defense hands over all classified information about the case to a civilian. Full video. Radar data. Transcripts. Everything. Why? General Vega explained it directly. The video was given to Maussan because the Defense Ministry was unaware of anyone else actively studying the subject in Mexico. But there's more. On May 1st, Maussan was invited back to Sedena. This time, to interview the crew. Major Jasso, Lieutenant Marin, Lieutenant Vasquez. The three main witnesses. On camera. Uncensored. Authorized by the Secretary of Defense to tell all. This is unprecedented. Not just in Mexico. In any country. On May 9th, Maussan presented the case on his television program. 2 days later, on May 11th, he convened an international press conference at the Sevilla Palace Hotel in Mexico City. For the first time, the world sees the video. It hears the testimonies. And on May 12th, the Mexican Department of Defense publicly confirms, yes, this happened. Yes, these are our pilots. Yes, this is our video. The news breaks. CNN covers the story multiple times. International media report from Mexico. For days, the case dominates conversations about UFOs worldwide. Maussan declares, this is historic news. There are hundreds of UFO videos, but none have been endorsed by any country's armed forces. The armed forces do not perpetuate hoaxes. But as is often the case, when an explanation seems impossible to find, someone always finds one. 2 weeks after the press conference, on May 26, 2004, Captain Alejandro Franz, a former pilot with experience flying over that exact region, published his analysis. And he proposes something that no one had considered. Cantarell Complex, Mexico's largest oil field, is located precisely in that area, 80 kilometers offshore, with dozens of platforms. And those platforms are constantly doing something. They burn gas. During oil extraction, the natural gas that comes out along with the crude oil needs to be released. It can't always be captured or stored. The solution: burn it in controlled flares. Constant fire. Intense. Visible from miles away. And absolutely brilliant in infrared. Franz argues, the atmospheric conditions that afternoon were terrible for accurate images. Heat, humidity, partial clouds at the land-sea interface during the thermal instability of sunset. One of the most difficult atmospheric conditions for obtaining accurate images. Under these conditions, atmospheric refraction can create mirages. It can make stationary light sources appear in different locations. It can multiply images. It can make fixed objects appear to move when in reality it is the camera that is moving. The 11 objects in the FLIR? Oil platform flares distorted by atmospheric conditions. Why did only 3 appear on radar? Because the radar was detecting other things, vehicles on the road, ground structures. In fact, the aircraft itself picked up a contact at 60 miles per hour that turned out to be a truck. Why were they not visible to the human eye? Because they were 50 to 90 kilometers away, obscured by atmospheric conditions. It's an elegant explanation. Mundane. Verifiable. show side-by-side comparison of real flares versus the FLIR video. And it makes sense, to a certain extent. The explanation for the oil flares solves a lot. But not everything. Here are the problems. First, the behavior of the first object. According to Major Jasso's report, the first contact was not stationary. It approached as the aircraft attempted to close in. Then it escaped, flying at tremendous speed. Deck flares don't do that. They're passive fire. Stationary. If the motion was illusory, caused by the aircraft's movement, why is it described as exit at tremendous speed? Second, the sequence of appearance. The report indicates that the objects appeared in waves. First one. Then two. Then 9 more, as if coming out of nowhere in a matter of seconds. If these platforms have been there all along, why didn't the FLIR system detect them all simultaneously from the start? Why are they appearing gradually? Third, the crew's perception. These aren't amateurs. They're military pilots who fly over this region regularly. They know the platforms. They know the area. They know the weather conditions. Lieutenant Marine said, "We were facing something that had never happened before." Would experienced anti-narcotics pilots mistake familiar flares for objects chasing them? Fourth, persecution behavior. Major Jasso described, "The jets chased the lights and I think they could sense that we were chasing them. When the jets stopped following the objects, they disappeared." Stationary objects don't disappear when you stop chasing them. They simply remain. Fifth, the decision of the Secretary of Defense. Herein lies perhaps the greatest mystery. Why would Mexico's top military commander make public a case that could be explained as a case of mistaken identity? Why not consult with experts in atmospheric phenomena first? Why not contact Pemex to verify Cantarell's operations that day? Why not submit the material to the National Autonomous University of Mexico or the National Meteorological Service? Instead, he hands everything over to a journalist ufologist, authorizes uncensored interviews, and publicly confirms the incident. Incompetence? Attention-seeking? Or a genuine belief that their pilots faced something inexplicable? We cannot talk about this case without talking about Jamie Mawson. And this is where the story gets complicated. Mawson is a controversial figure. During his career as a journalist, he won awards, including the United Nations Global 500 for his environmental work. He hosted respected investigative programs. But in his career as a ufologist, let's just say his track record is mixed. Over the years, Mawson has promoted cases that turned out to be frauds. The most infamous, in 2023, he presented what he called alien mummies to the Mexican Congress. Subsequent analysis revealed that they were human-made constructions using ancient remains. Skeptics accuse him of having promoted more than 30 fraudulent cases. They call him a charlatan. Other Mexican ufologists have publicly distanced themselves from him. So, does this invalidate the 2004 case? Here's the thing, Mawson didn't create this case. He didn't fabricate the video. He didn't train the pilots to lie. He didn't convince the Mexican Secretary of Defense to release classified information. The case existed before Mawson touched it. The witnesses are actual military personnel. The video is authentic, according to the Department of Defense itself. What Mawson did was publicize it. And yes, he probably presented it with the bias of someone who wants to believe in extraterrestrial visitors. But that doesn't change the fundamental facts. Something was detected. Something was recorded. And the Mexican government deemed it important and genuine enough to make it public. Michael Shermer, founder of Skeptic magazine, appeared on CNN 3 times during the week of the disclosure. He pointed out something important. Accounts of the incident varied. Initially, it was reported that the UFOs were only discovered when reviewing footage after the flight. Then, that the crew saw them during the flight. Finally, that they were pursued and surrounded. Shermer called it a fisherman's tale, growing with each retelling. It's a valid criticism. But it could also be crew members processing trauma, journalists misinterpreting statements, and the natural confusion that comes with reporting extraordinary events. Or it could be exactly what Shermer says, progressive amplification of a mundane event. Here's something that makes this case particularly intriguing. 8 months after the Campeche incident, in November 2004, something similar happened off the coast of California. The aircraft carrier USS Nimitz. U.S. Navy pilots detect objects on radar and with FLIR systems. Objects that move in impossible ways. That appear and disappear. That seem to react to the presence of the jets. The famous Tic Tac UFO. That case also involved highly trained military personnel. It was also confirmed by the Department of Defense. And it also remains officially unexplained. The similarity is unsettling. In 2017, the New York Times published an article on the Nimitz case, revealing a secret Pentagon program investigating UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. The 2004 Mexican case was largely forgotten in comparison. But it happened first. And unlike the U.S. case, which was leaked years later, the Mexican government made it public voluntarily, weeks after it happened. 2 military personnel. 2 countries. The same year. Similar equipment. Similar object behavior. Both cases officially confirmed. What are the odds? So what really happened on March 5, 2004 over the Gulf of Mexico? Option 1, 3 experienced military pilots, using state-of-the-art surveillance equipment, mistook flares from oil platforms for objects pursuing them. Atmospheric conditions created such convincing illusions that the Secretary of Defense decided to make the case public internationally. It's possible. Franz's explanation is technically sound. Option 2, the crew detected something genuinely anomalous. Something that exhibited intelligent behavior. Something that appeared on military detection systems but was invisible to the human eye. Something the Mexican government couldn't explain and decided to make public. It's also possible. The testimonies are consistent. The evidence is real. Or perhaps the answer lies somewhere in between. Perhaps they detected the flares, but the conditions made them seem so strange that they genuinely believed they were seeing something else. Perhaps the first object was something unidentified, and then the flares further complicated the situation. What we cannot deny, these men believed what they reported. Their fear was real. Their confusion was genuine. And their government publicly supported them. Were they the flames of Cantarell? Probably. Is that the whole story? Probably not. This case teaches us something important about the search for the unknown. Sometimes, the mundane explanation is correct. And we should accept it. But sometimes, the mundane explanation doesn't quite fit. And being left with questions isn't admitting defeat. It's being honest. 20 years later, the video is still there. The testimonies remain. The radar data hasn't changed. And we still don't know with absolute certainty what that infrared camera captured in the sky over Campeche. Perhaps that's the most fascinating thing of all. What do you think? Distorted flares due to atmospheric conditions? Anything else? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this in-depth analysis, give it a like. If you want more cases documented with the same rigor, subscribe. And remember, in the search for the unknown, intellectual honesty is more important than being right. See you in the next case.